Veterans on Parliament Hill today fighting back against fast-approaching cuts. The government is shutting down 8 Veterans Affairs offices on Friday. One office in Prince George has already been closed. Here's a look at where the rest of these offices are located. On the East Coast, you've got an office in Corner Brook, Charlottetown and Sydney. They'll all be closed. Thunder Bay and Windsor's offices will be closed. Heading west there, you got Brandon, Saskatoon and Kelowna will see shutdowns as of Friday. The government says veterans still can get help at hundreds of Service Canada offices, but vets argue they'll be missing out on vital care from caseworkers. What will these closures actually mean, and is the government shortchanging Canada's vets? Joining me now, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade, Erin O'Toole, NDP Veterans Affairs critic Peter Stauffer, and Liberal National Defence critic Joyce Murray. Good to see all of you. Vets were on Parliament Hill today, and it was emotional. And you could politely say they were asking the government to reverse its decision to close Veterans Affairs offices, but they were demanding. It was an emotional story. They met with Veterans Affairs Minister Julian Fantino. Will the government reconsider the closures, 8 of which will take place this Friday?
Well, Evan, I attended the first event with a number of these veterans. These events are held by PSAC, and I think it's important to recognize that. They're expressing their concern about the office closure, and some of the veterans have used various offices. At the first event several months ago, I met Mr. Clark, one of the veterans that is here today, I understand, and we listened to their concerns about providing services through Service Canada. And his concern, I asked him at the event, what can we do to help transition this? And he said, make sure that there's Veterans Affairs trained people in Service Canada. So we actually listened. We spoke to the minister right after that event. And so in Sydney, for instance, the office Mr. Clark uses, there will be a trained Veterans Affairs case manager embedded within that Service Canada office, which in most of the cases,
it won't be. There won't be
in all of the 8 that are closing that you're talking about, there will be a Veterans Affairs trained person in the Service Canada. And Evan, with Service Canada, in some cases, there's a federal government Service Canada office in the same building or within 100 meters of these Veterans Affairs offices that are standalone, and the network of Service Canada office at 600 actually allow more veterans greater access to a network of offices.
All right, that's what the government said. But veterans, when we listen to them today, some of them are saying a different story. Now, I know you say it's PSAC, there's a union element here, but let me just, at risk of dismissing these guys as simply spokesmen or mouthpieces of unions, look what Ray Lamore, a World War II vet from Thunder Bay, said today. I want you to listen to this.
We are all being betrayed by our government. We just make no sense to take these services away from men and women who have sacrificed so much for this country.
He's saying, and he went on to say, that they're putting veterans at risk, these closures. What do you say to a veteran like Mr. Lamore?
Well, first, Mr. Lamore is one of our great veterans, and everyone that serves plays a special role in Canada and our history. And the truth is, Evan, that we're actually doing more and providing more services. So something that didn't exist when Mr. Lamore left the forces after World War II were operational stress clinics. You know, PTSD and operational stress has existed from World War I when we called it shell shock. Now we're actually opening a network. We have 17 operational stress injury clinics to deal with post-traumatic stress, a whole range of issues in the community. But he still feels betrayed because these offices are being closed. When you consider the fact that there's Service Canada will be an option. Veterans with mobility issues can get home visits. There's the MyVac account for some of the newer veterans that are Afghan veterans that may want to monitor their own account on their smartphone. Or Veterans Affairs is doing its best to make sure that they're providing services from our traditional veterans, World War II and Korea, right through to our modern-day veterans from the Cold War into Afghanistan. It will not be a perfect system, and when there's breakdowns in that system, we have to fix it. But in terms of the network of Service Canada offices offering vet services, this will actually allow more veterans closer service.
All right, so Peter Stauffer, the government, despite what some of the veterans are saying, they're actually saying it's better, not worse. What do you say?
It's simply not true. I've already had veterans across the country go into Services Canada offices, and what they were told quite clearly, here's the 1-866-522-2122 number, and there's a computer over in the corner that will assist you. Don't forget, Evan, as Services Canada also suffered an awful lot of cuts across the country as well. And to have one person in an office in these 8 areas that closed, let's not forget Prince George closed earlier. The reality is one person can't replace the job of 13, for example, that are in Cape Breton. And what these personal services offer the veteran is the comfort to know that when Mr. Clark or someone goes into these offices, they're already dealing with people who understand their concerns, who know their history, who know the trigger points of their post-traumatic stress disorder, that can offer the comfort and the speed in order to get their resolutions fixed immediately. That service simply will not and cannot be provided in the same manner at a Services Canada
When the
office.
government says they've spent more money on vets and there's more services, what's your response?
My response is quite clearly, we have asked quite clearly where that money was spent and where it was allocated. We have yet to get a response from that. But there is no question that when you look at the new Veterans Charter, which was a concern as well, that had improvements to veteran services. There is no question about that. But when you close these offices across the country, and if you also look at other things they're doing with the transfer of St. Anne's Hospital, DVA is facing over 2,000 employees will be losing their jobs within DVA by the end of 2014-2015. That is a almost 50% cut to that department, and that sends the wrong message to veterans who and their families and RCMP members who require that assistance.
Joyce Murray again, and we've been going over this for a number of months. It was about the closure of these offices, and we've talked about the areas where some of these are being closed now, and then the shift towards different services. What do you make about it? Is it simply that some of the older veterans are having a difficult time adjusting and there's different service, or is the service actually gone down?
Well, there's a range of veterans that are concerned, Evan, and you're right. We've been hearing the same arguments for months from the government representatives that don't worry, be happy, things are better. But in fact, that's not the veterans' experience, and I think it's very, very disrespectful that in the first place, a lot of these changes were made without proper consultation, and then the government keeps insisting that they're fine when the veterans are saying, no, our experience is this isn't working. So one of the veterans who came today to Ottawa told me that he spent an hour waiting on a line to get through to Service Canada, and when he got through, the person said, oh, sorry, we can't help you with that. So as well as the lack of continuity, the lack of in-depth knowledge of how to help veterans, with some of whom are suffering from complex mental injuries,
but when the
government
Prime Minister
needs to
says, and you heard Aaron O'Toole, this is an improvement to the service of veterans because you've got over 600 service centers now available to vets, okay? They can go anywhere. What do you say to that?
Well, there may be some things that were not there before, and that's good. That's what we need. We have another wave of veterans coming from the operations in Afghanistan. We have needs today that the veterans are saying that they're being that the services are being shortcut and it's not working. So the government needs to decide really whether their compact with our veterans is that they will do their utmost to take care of veterans' needs or not. And I think they've broken that compact.
The vets were on the Hill today. I've spoken to them. We've all spoken to lots of vets. One of the things they miss, and I think Peter Stauffer alluded to this, is the face-to-face contact, knowing the case, because each individual case is very complex. As I understand it, the void by these closures will be filled by either one special person there as opposed to many, or on Service Canada online and phone contact. Does the government have any data, any consultations that you can say this will assure vets that in fact it's an improvement? In other words, how do we know it's not just cost savings and saying don't worry, there's lots of places to go? What data do you have to vets to say we promise you things will get better, here's the proof, as opposed to we're saving a lot of money on this, deal with it?
Evan, this isn't just about saving money. It's actually about, as I said, building in flexibility.
But are you saving money?
I think it's reallocating money. There's $700 million more in the budget per year on average than when we took government. We're spending more, but we've got to spend it wisely. You talked about personal contact. In fact, that's why the Royal Canadian Legion was set up for that after the First Great War. But these centers, you've got to remember, Veterans Affairs Centers are more for the administration of benefits and that sort of thing. If a veteran has a mental health issue or an operational stress injury issue, the centers we're opening, the operational stress injury clinics across Canada, we've opened 17, are actually the places where that interaction, where a veteran that is suffering can have more of
But
that
will there
dialogue.
be specialized knowledge at these Service Canada? I mean, I think that's what the vets are wondering. They come to their problems, and they're going to have one person there that knows that's the issue?
As I said at the outset, that was a point Mr. Clark made directly at the first PSAC event. I took that directly to the minister and said that's a valid point. These offices, they're accustomed to going to in these 8 offices, and even though the Service Canada is literally co-located, we need to make sure that there's that expertise, and we've provided that. So those 8 offices,
is that enough?
There's a Veterans Affairs trained person. You've got to remember, Evan, we've got to spend money wisely and innovative to meet all needs. In some of these offices, they all had less than 150 cases. Less than 150 cases.
I mean, I was shocked, actually, and I thought it was pretty instructive that Aaron just said that Legions were set up to be the face-to-face contact for veterans. And at the same time, Legion halls around the country are struggling and are not getting much support from the government. And the Legions are selling poppies in order to fill in some of the gaps of service from what this government has cut.
Personal interaction,
so it
is
an
important.
incredibly callous comment, and I just, is that it's up to the Legion to do these things?